Thanks, everybody. So we're going to talk about safeguarding America's Bitcoin today, which I think is a very interesting and timely topic with everything else that we've been talking about and with some of the things that have been happening overall in the security news around the crypto industry in the last few weeks. So we'll start with maybe quick set of intros. I'm Nick, CEO of Casa. We're one of the biggest Bitcoin self-custody companies in the world.
My name is Mike Belshe. I'm founder and CEO of BitGo. We've been operating since 2013. We have a full complement of both self-custody and custody services here in America and 7 trust companies around the planet.
Hi there. My name is Nathan McCauley. I'm co-founder and CEO of Anchorage Digital. We're a digital asset custodian, trading partner, and we are the first and only federally chartered bank overseen by the U.S. Treasury here in the United States.
Awesome. So we now have a Bitcoin strategic reserve and a digital asset stockpile. What are the unique considerations that we have around securing nation-state level crypto assets compared to your kind of typical institutional or individual custody?
Sure. Well, security is something you're just never done with. I did a talk, I think probably 3 or 4 years ago, about securing the $1 trillion wallet. And it's kind of a jest. You don't put $1 trillion in a single wallet. That would not be a very smart thing to do. But as the value of the asset keeps going up, of course, the types of attackers and the threats continues to go up. So you just don't finish, right? And as we look to the next level, of course, we have to be thinking about how do we use multiple keys? How do we separate those? How do we make sure that we have understanding and control of all of the paths to it? There's a lot of technical people here. We could probably talk about it at some more depth, but obviously, as now we're at the nation-state level, we have to be going to the next level of security.
Yeah, I'd say just the number of issues that have happened around the security of private keys, the security of wallets, the security of Bitcoin holdings. It's almost a meme in the industry about how much problems like this happen. Agree with Mike. The point with digital asset security is there's not one answer. There's infinite number of things you have to get right, a never-ending set of things you have to get right. So this is not just about technical solutions. It's about making sure that an organization and a muscle is built that stays up to date on the latest trends. The way I think about it is you have the comparison in the EO to Fort Knox. Fort Knox works because it turns out the U.S. government is actually quite good at violence when necessary, and so can utilize its violence mechanism in order to protect the gold at Fort Knox. Within the cyber realm, we don't necessarily have that advantage. We have to kind of stay up to date on the latest there. And I think this is why Michael Saylor's comments earlier were so important. In order for us to be the leader in the digital realm with digital asset security, we have to also be the leader in the cybersecurity realm. And so as we think about how to secure the SBR at a nation-state level, we have to assume that there are nation-state level attackers that will come after that. And it needs to be a true investment of resources, time, and attention.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing we definitely cannot afford to have is the headline, North Korea hacks the US Bitcoin. And that's not an unreasonable headline to see, especially after, this was the headline for Bybit 2 weeks ago. And I think that's something that, as a nation, historically, we've been very fortunate that we have the world's strongest military. We have all this, the oceans on 2 sides of a giant landmass, right? And all of that is much less relevant in cyberspace, where a very small country like North Korea could potentially have a very large effect on the US's image.
Well, they get turned off? Oh, there we are. The Bybit hack gets a lot of noise, right? And 1.5 billion is a lot of money. Look, super simple fix for that. Don't put more than $100 million in a single wallet, right? Would have fixed that particular instance. And that's not even getting into some of the failures that they had around not getting security delegation down so that they can modify the smart contract. Okay, so they made a bunch of silly mistakes. We absolutely know how to secure this stuff right now, and we can keep it safe in nation states. For Bitcoin in particular, it's got one of the safest models. We've got multi-sig, it's on-chain. We know how to secure these keys. On behalf of the government, we know how to secure these keys. And we can do that in a setup, you're an expert on 3 of 5. That's what I think primarily what you guys do, right? We do mostly 2 out of 3, but you can also, devise other setups that could be more specific. Again, as the size of the reserve gets larger, we will want to keep revisiting this, but definitely using a combination of physical security along with virtual security. We know how to do this today.
Should the government hold its own keys?
Yes.
I think if the government wants to make that investment, that'd be a totally appropriate thing to do. I would dare say it'd even be cool if the government went to the level of designing a self-custody system, implementing that. I think it's worth understanding what that investment would look like. I think that's probably dozens of people permanently who will help manage and oversee a setup like that. And so I think a prudent answer would be to start with using custodians. And then if there is continued growth, we come up with budget neutral ways to maybe acquire even more Bitcoin as the stockpile grows, as the reserve grows, as a true investment. That might make sense. But I think the prudent option would be to start with the custodial partners.
They invited me to insert my opinion as moderator, and so I think I want to disagree slightly with that last point, which is that last Wednesday we had the government owned some Bitcoin, owned some crypto, and it was, it's maybe sitting in a closet at the U.S. Marshal's office or something like that.
On a ledger drive in somebody's desk.
Yeah, it's in somebody's desk right now. But then, as of Thursday, the Bitcoin became a strategic asset for the country. And so I think you can actually think about the strategic Bitcoin reserve and the crypto stockpile differently. And as a strategic asset for the country, I think the US has to be really putting the effort into securing this asset, just like we put in the effort to secure our gold. And then the crypto stockpile, which maybe we're selling, who knows what we're going to do with it, but that we have a lot more freedom with what we can do with that. That makes sense to have it a custodian. It's less of a strategic asset for the country. But when we think about owning cyberspace, just like we own our land space and just like we own our airspace, the U.S. really needs, I think, that level of control that comes from holding their own keys.
Well, look, also we're interested in figuring out how to future-proof this reserve, right? I mean, I think there's a big political discussion to be had. It's outside of this room, but we could time lock those coins for a very long time. Obviously, at some point you want to have access to it, and you want to have access to it when you need it. What those events might be, it's unclear. But you could start with the small amount because it's small today, right? And they could lock it up for an extended period of time to kind of get through this period of instability as the reserve gets established. And then you can get into a rotating set of time locks, which could actually all be audited and monitored online. We could all see it all the time. But yeah, I do think it's really important for the government to hold the keys directly. Like, it would just be any type of failure with a third party on it, I think would be a mistake. And of course, there's lots of software that you can use to employ along the way, including the software that's been used by custodians like BitGo for forever. So there's a lot of good starting points, but they should hold the keys.
Yeah, I think to me the significance of this strategic Bitcoin reserve is, on one hand, it's about the strategic Bitcoin reserve and the vote of confidence that's being put in Bitcoin as an asset class. I think at a more pragmatic level, the natural second and third order implications of having a strategic Bitcoin reserve become pretty profound. To talk about a few things like that, I think probably we're going to end up in a world where people are able to pay their taxes in Bitcoin or other digital assets. People are able to maybe pay for their DMV licensure with stablecoins. And so the U.S. Treasury, as the tastemaker for what the rest of the federal government uses in terms of banking partners, in terms of infrastructure partners, will play a key role in deciding exactly how this is going to play out. And so I think the question on how the strategic reserve is held is not just a question of where are we going to hold the Bitcoin, where are we going to hold the other coins that are in there, but really what is the all of government strategy for embracing digital assets. I think thinking of it in that light, it starts to make sense to think about real service providers that can help. Certainly, we don't want every single agency within the federal government building their own self-custody systems to facilitate tax collection or other kinds of services that the federal government has. And so I think this really is the starting point for what ends up being an all of government effort. And I think keeping that in mind as designing the systems and processes that go into here is really the framing that I think probably Treasury is going to take with thinking through this issue.
So thinking about just kind of the stockpile and the reserve, can we just talk through at a high level for maybe the non-custody experts, what are the layers of loss and threat vectors that we need to be thinking about protecting against with this type of asset? And how is that different than a physical asset, or even just how some of the other digital systems that we use work today? Like what are kind of those different levels of things that we need to be thinking about protection for?
Well, it starts at key generation. So the first thing that has to happen is you're going to put it into some set of wallets. The fidelity of that key generation has to be done under very secure, controlled circumstances. Usually it's videotaped along with that, special computers, all the regular things with that. Because if the key is compromised right off the bat, then of course the money can disappear later. Or if it's brute forcible later because you did something insecure, that's a problem. So the initial security, technology, processes around it are actually pretty deep, no matter what. Of course, you got some construct that you use. It's probably a multi-sig based thing for a Bitcoin type reserve. You've got where are those keys going to be physically held. In the case of what we do, we hold 3 keys. All of them are always 1,000 miles apart from each other. Some of the things you have to protect against on each of those is like, well, who has access to it, right? So even inside the government, somebody's going to have access. You need to use some sort of an M of N system because you want to make sure that in case something bad happens, losing one key doesn't jeopardize losing the entire thing. The personnel that are involved there, how do you avoid any insider problems there? You've got physical safety issues in terms of digital storage, in terms of networking access, et cetera. You got protocols that have to be built for how you coordinate a quorum of signing in order to enact a transaction. Pretty much every single aspect from physical security to digital security has to be thought of. And then, of course, you're probably keeping it cold, which means you've got to figure out how are you doing your online to offline transitions.
Nathan, anything to add there?
No, like I said earlier, there's 1,000 things to get right. There's not one.
And it only takes one thing to get wrong.
Yeah, exactly right. That's what we see with almost every one of the attacks that we've seen over the last, say, 15 years in crypto has been one thing that was wrong, and that leads to, unfortunately, can be pretty devastating loss. So separation of concerns, personnel considerations, key generation, key usage, all of these factor in. I'd say another one to be thinking about is audit. How do we make sure that we still have the Bitcoin that we thought we had? How do we make sure that it's still there and able to be audited and overseen? One of the things in the executive order called out, in fact, we at this point really don't even know how much digital assets are owned by the U.S. government. So being able to have an ongoing accounting there of what that position is, where those assets are, is another I think key consideration as thinking about how to secure the reserve.
Yeah, how important is, and we have a minute left here, how important is the transparency aspect of this? And how far do we as a country want to go with this for our country's Bitcoin? If you look at the El Salvador model, they've got a page that says exactly how much Bitcoin they have at all times. Do we want to go to that length or something, more manual, or even not? Today, it's not even audited at all.
I'd assume that it will look something like the transparency that comes out of the Federal Reserve. Federal Reserve publishes their balance sheet on a regular basis. And so this kind of understanding of, hey, what's backing the dollar? What are the strategic reserves there? Where we have transparency on how much oil is owned by the U.S., the other kinds of strategic reserves we have. So I imagine that the transparency here would be in line with that, perhaps even more, because we'll have blockchain-based transparency as well. We'll be able to see the addresses on chain and be able to paint those wallets and know, hey, this is the wallet that is owned by the American people.
Yep. Okay. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Thank you both for your time.
Thank you.